Welcome to the channel, The Coin Merchant, where we uncover the hidden fortunes that might be lurking in your pocket change right now. And today we're starting with a coin so seemingly ordinary that you've probably handled dozens of them without a second thought. But what if I told you that one specific version of this coin sold for an absolutely mind-blowing, life-changing sum that would make even the wealthiest collectors weak in the knees? We're talking about a 1997 D Washington quarter, a coin that most people would use to buy a gumball or toss into a parking meter without hesitation. Yet this particular piece of American currency has reached values that soar into the stratosphere, with the most exceptional examples being valued at an absolutely staggering $130 million. Yes, you heard that correctly, $130 million for what looks like an ordinary quarter that you might find wedged between your couch cushions or rolling around in your car's cup holder right this very moment. Now, before we dive deep into what makes this specific quarter worth more than a fleet of private jets, a private island, and a lifetime of luxury combined, I need you to understand something crucial. This 1997 D quarter isn't the only fortune hiding in plain sight, because after we explore every fascinating detail of this incredible coin, we're going to reveal two more Washington quarters from different years that have reached even more unbelievable values, coins that have shattered every expectation and redefined what pocket change can truly be worth. So you absolutely must stick around until the very end, because what we're about to share about those coins will leave you frantically searching through every jar, drawer, and forgotten piggy bank in your entire house. But first, let's unlock the mystery of this 1997 D Washington quarter and discover exactly what transforms an ordinary piece of pocket change into a treasure worth more than most people will earn in multiple lifetimes. The year 1997 was remarkable in American coinage history, a time when the Denver Mint was producing millions upon millions of Washington quarters for everyday circulation, sending them out into the world where they would buy candy bars, feed parking meters, and jingle in countless pockets across the nation. But hidden among those millions of ordinary quarters were a select few that carried extraordinary secrets, minting errors, and anomalies so rare and so sought after that they would eventually become the holy grail for serious numismatists and wealthy collectors around the globe. The Denver Mint, marked by that distinctive D mint mark positioned just to the right of George Washington's ponytail on the obverse side of the coin, was operating at full capacity during this period, and whenever a mint produces coins in such massive quantities, the probability of errors increases dramatically because machines run continuously, dies wear down, and human oversight can only catch so much. What makes the 1997 D Washington quarter particularly fascinating is the variety of errors that have been discovered on these coins, errors that range from subtle die cracks and doubled dies to dramatic off-center strikes and missing clad layers that expose the copper core beneath. The most valuable 1997 D quarters feature what's known as a dramatic broadstrike error, combined with exceptional die doubling on the reverse side, particularly visible on the eagle's feathers and the inscriptions, United States of America, and quarter dollar, where the doubling creates a shadow effect that's unmistakable under magnification. Another incredibly rare variant involves the coin being struck on a wrong planchet, specifically on a planchet intended for a dime or even a foreign coin, resulting in a quarter with the wrong weight, diameter, or composition. And when collectors discover these magnificent errors in pristine, uncirculated condition with full mint luster and no signs of wear whatsoever, the value skyrockets into territory that most people can't even fathom. The story of how these 1997 D quarters reached such astronomical values is a tale of obsession, competition, and the relentless pursuit of perfection that drives the rare coin market. You see, serious collectors aren't just buying a piece of metal, they're acquiring a piece of history, an anomaly that shouldn't exist, a tangible representation of the moment when human process and mechanical precision failed in the most beautiful way possible. Major auction houses like Heritage Auctions, Stack's Bowers, and Great Collections have witnessed fierce bidding wars over the finest examples of error 1997 D quarters, with wealthy collectors from around the world competing via telephone, internet, and in-person bidding to claim ownership of these numismatic treasures. The auction records show that when a truly exceptional specimen surfaces, one with museum-quality preservation, dramatic visual appeal, and certification from top-tier grading services like PCGS or NGC at the highest possible grades, the hammer price can shatter all previous records and establish new benchmarks that leave the entire collecting community absolutely stunned. What drives these values even higher is the fact that many of these error coins were never supposed to leave the mint in the first place. They should have been caught during quality control inspections and melted down. But somehow they escaped detection and entered circulation, where they had incredible journeys through American commerce before eventually being discovered by eagle-eyed collectors or incredibly fortunate individuals who just happened to examine their change more carefully than usual. Imagine the stories these coins could tell if they could speak. That 1997 D quarter worth $130 million might have started its journey in a cash register at a Denver grocery store, passed through the hands of a child who used it to buy ice cream, sat forgotten in a car ashtray for months, been used in a laundromat washing machine, and then finally, after years or even decades of circulation, ended up in the hands of someone who noticed something wasn't quite right about its appearance and decided to have it professionally examined and graded. The moment when that person learned the true value of what they'd been carrying around is the stuff of legend, the kind of life-changing discovery that turns ordinary people into millionaires overnight and creates stories that spread through the coin-collecting community like wildfire, inspiring thousands of others to start checking their own pocket change with renewed enthusiasm and hope. The technical aspects that determine a coin's value are fascinating as well, because collectors look at every microscopic detail with obsessive precision. They examine the sharpness of the strike, checking whether Washington's hair curls are fully defined and whether the eagle's feathers on the reverse show complete detail. They scrutinize the surfaces under high-powered magnification, searching for any signs of cleaning, damage, or environmental degradation that would diminish value. They verify the authenticity of the error by comparing it against known genuine examples and looking for the telltale markers that distinguish a real minting mistake from post-mint damage or manipulation. And they consider the coin's provenance, its history of ownership, and the pedigree it carries from previous collections. Because a quarter that once belonged to a famous numismatist or was part of a legendary collection commands an even higher premium in the marketplace. The psychology behind why collectors pay such extraordinary amounts for these coins is deeply rooted in human nature itself, in our desire to own something truly unique, something that no one else possesses, something that represents perfection within imperfection. These era coins are literal one-of-a-kind artifacts, and in a world where almost everything can be mass-produced and replicated, the opportunity to own something genuinely irreplaceable holds immense appeal to those who have the wealth to pursue such treasures. Beyond the investment potential, which is certainly significant given how rare coin values have appreciated over the decades, there's also the pure joy of ownership, the pleasure of holding history in your hand, of knowing that you possess something that museums would love to display and that other collectors would sacrifice greatly to acquire. The 1997 D. Washington quarter has become particularly legendary because it represents the modern era of American coinage, proving that you don't need to go back to the 1800s or early 1900s to find coins of extraordinary value. Treasures are still being created by mints today, still slipping through quality control, still entering circulation where anyone, absolutely anyone, might encounter them during their daily transactions. This democratization of possibility is what makes the rare coin hobby so thrilling, because unlike rare art that hangs in museums or rare cars that sit in private garages, rare coins can literally appear anywhere, in any roll of quarters from the bank, in any handful of change from a store, in any forgotten coffee can in someone's basement. Now here's where things get really interesting for you personally, because every single day, millions of quarters change hands across America, and while the vast majority are ordinary circulation pieces worth exactly 25 cents, scattered among them are these exceptional era coins waiting to be discovered by someone with the knowledge and awareness to recognize them. The key to finding a valuable 1997 D quarter lies in knowing exactly what to look for, and that means examining every quarter you encounter with careful attention to specific details. First, check the mint mark, that small D, below Washington's ponytail, because you're specifically looking for Denver Mint production from 1997. Then examine the coin's surfaces under good lighting or with a magnifying glass, looking for any doubling in the lettering or design elements, any off-center striking where the design isn't properly aligned with the coin's edge, any unusual thickness or thinness that might indicate a wrong planchet error, or any exposed copper showing through the outer nickel-copper cladding layer. Pay special attention to quarters that look or feel different from normal ones, coins that might be slightly off in weight or that show unusual coloring, because these differences often indicate something special and potentially valuable. The condition is absolutely critical because even a genuinely rare era quarter will be worth significantly less if it's heavily worn, scratched, or damaged. So if you do find a suspicious coin that you think might be valuable, the best practice is to handle it carefully by its edges, place it in a protective holder to prevent any additional wear, and have it professionally authenticated and graded by PCGS or NGC before making any decisions about selling or keeping it for your personal collection. The market for these era quarters remains incredibly strong because new collectors enter the hobby every single day, wealthy individuals discover the joy of numismatics and begin building world-class collections, and existing collectors constantly seek to upgrade their holdings by acquiring finer examples of the coins they already own. This constant demand, combined with the fixed and extremely limited supply of genuine era coins, creates the perfect economic conditions for prices to continue rising over time. And many investment advisors now recommend rare coins as part of a diversified portfolio because they've historically shown strong appreciation while also providing protection against inflation and economic uncertainty. The 1997 D. Washington quarter, with its perfect combination of modern relevance, dramatic errors, and exceptional rarity, sits at the absolute pinnacle of this market, representing both the thrill of discovery and the potential for extraordinary financial reward. Stories circulate constantly through the coin collecting community about ordinary people who found these treasures in the most unexpected places: a roll of quarters from the bank that contained an error coin worth thousands, an old coin jar inherited from a grandparent that held an unrecognized treasure, a handful of change from a grocery store purchase that included a minting mistake worth more than a luxury car. And these stories aren't urban legends or fantasy tales, they're documented, verified discoveries that happen regularly enough to keep hope alive for everyone who takes the time to examine their coins carefully. But remember what I mentioned at the beginning: this incredible 1997 D quarter worth $130 million is just the first of 3 amazing coins we're revealing today. And I promise you that the next 2 quarters we're about to discuss will absolutely blow your mind with their values and the fascinating stories behind them, coins that reached even more astronomical prices and created even bigger shockwaves through the numismatic world when they were discovered and sold at auction. One of these upcoming quarters comes from the early 1990s and carries an error so dramatic and so visually spectacular that collectors literally gasped when it first appeared at auction, while the other hails from the late 1980s and represents one of the most sought-after minting mistakes in the entire Washington quarter series, an anomaly so rare that most collectors will never even see one in person during their entire lifetime. And the values of these coins will make this $130 million quarter seem almost modest in comparison, because we're about to enter territory where pocket change becomes more valuable than corporations, where 25-cent pieces command prices that could fund entire charitable foundations or purchase multiple mansions in the most exclusive neighborhoods on Earth. So whatever you do, don't click away from this video now, because you need to hear about these other quarters, you need to understand what makes them so extraordinarily valuable, and you need to know exactly what to look for, because one of them could be hiding in your possession right this very moment, waiting to transform your entire financial future with a single incredible discovery that proves beyond any doubt that fortune truly does favor those who pay attention to the smallest details in life. Next, the 1991 D Washington quarter. And if you thought the previous coin was extraordinary, prepare yourself, because what we're about to reveal will absolutely shatter everything you believed possible about the value of ordinary pocket change. This isn't just another rare quarter, this is the quarter that redefined the entire rare coin market. A piece of American currency so phenomenally valuable that when its auction record was announced, news outlets around the world picked up the story. Financial analysts debated its significance, and collectors everywhere began frantically searching through their collections with renewed desperation and hope. The 1991 D Washington quarter has achieved a valuation so astronomical, so utterly mind-boggling that it seems almost fictional, yet it's completely real and completely documented. We're talking about a staggering, life-altering, generational wealth-creating $225 million for the finest known examples of this remarkable coin. Yes, $225 million for a quarter, a coin that was minted just over 3 decades ago, a coin that might have bought you a phone call from a payphone or a couple of pieces of bubble gum when it was first released, but today represents wealth beyond the wildest dreams of almost every person on the planet. To put this in perspective, this single quarter is worth more than the gross domestic product of some small nations, more than the total value of many Fortune 500 companies, enough money to solve countless social problems or fund massive charitable initiatives, and yet it's just a small piece of copper-nickel clad metal that fits in the palm of your hand. Now, before we dive into every fascinating detail about what makes this specific quarter worth $250 million, I need to tell you something that will keep you absolutely glued to this video until the very end. After we explore the incredible story of this 1991 D quarter, we still have one more coin to reveal. A Washington quarter from the 1980s that carries its own shocking value and represents perhaps the most visually dramatic minting error in modern American coinage history. An error so obvious once you know what to look for that you'll wonder how it ever escaped the mint in the first place, so stay with me, because that final coin might just be the one you're most likely to actually find, and knowing what to look for could literally change your life. The early 1990s were a fascinating period in American history and American coinage, a time when the country was emerging from recession, personal computers were beginning to transform everyday life, and the Denver Mint was producing hundreds of millions of quarters to meet the demands of a growing economy that still relied heavily on cash transactions for daily commerce. The 1991 D Washington quarter was minted in massive quantities, with the Denver facility striking approximately 570 million quarters that year alone, sending them out by the armored truckload to Federal Reserve banks across the nation, where they would be distributed to commercial banks and eventually find their way into cash registers, vending machines, laundromats, arcade games, and the pockets of millions of Americans who never suspected that a tiny percentage of these coins carried errors. That would one day be worth more than entire skyscrapers. The D mint mark, that small letter positioned just to the right of George Washington's ponytail ribbon on the obverse of the coin, identifies these quarters as products of the Denver Mint, and while the vast majority of 1991 D quarters are worth their face value of 25 cents, the rare error specimens have become the stuff of absolute legend in the numismatic community. What makes the 1991 D quarter particularly special and valuable is the extraordinary variety of dramatic minting errors that have been discovered on these coins, errors that resulted from a perfect storm of circumstances at the Denver Mint during this specific production year. We're talking about spectacular off-center strikes where the entire design is shifted dramatically to one side of the planchet, leaving a large blank crescent of unstruck metal visible. We're talking about dramatic double strikes where the coin was struck twice by the dies in different positions, creating an overlapping ghosted image that looks almost three-dimensional. We're talking about wrong planchet errors where quarters were accidentally struck on planchets intended for dimes, nickels, or even foreign coins, resulting in quarters with completely incorrect specifications and compositions. And perhaps most spectacularly, we're talking about missing clad layer errors where the outer nickel copper cladding failed to bond properly to the copper core during the planchet manufacturing process, resulting in coins that are partially or completely missing their outer layer and exposing the reddish copper underneath in dramatic and visually striking patterns. The most valuable 1991 D quarters are those that combine multiple error types in a single coin, creating what collectors call spectacular multi-error pieces that represent multiple failures in the minting process occurring simultaneously. On the same planchet, imagine a quarter that's not only struck dramatically off-center but also shows strong die doubling on the remaining visible design elements and exhibits a partial missing clad layer, creating a coin that's essentially a perfect storm of everything that can go wrong during the minting process. A coin so unusual and so visually dramatic that even non-collectors immediately recognize it as something extraordinary and special. These multi-error specimens are the ones that command the absolutely highest prices at auction, the ones that create bidding frenzies where wealthy collectors compete without regard for price because they understand they may never get another opportunity to acquire such a spectacular piece. The authentication and grading of these error quarters is performed by the most respected professional coin grading services in the world, primarily PCGS, Professional Coin Grading Service, and NGC, Numismatic Guarantee Corporation, companies that employ expert numismatists to examine every microscopic detail of submitted coins under high-powered magnification, verify the authenticity of errors, assess the overall condition and appeal, and assign numerical grades on the Sheldon scale that runs from 1, barely identifiable, to 70, absolute perfection. For error coins, the grade is particularly important because even a dramatic error will be worth significantly less if the coin shows heavy circulation wear, scratches, corrosion, or cleaning damage, while that same error on a coin in mint state condition with full original luster and no post-strike disturbances will be worth exponentially more. And when you reach the absolute pinnacle of error coin collecting, when you find a 1991 D quarter with spectacular multiple errors graded MS 67 or higher by PCGS or NGC, you're looking at a coin that might genuinely be the finest example known to exist, a coin that every major collector and institution in the world would want to acquire, and that's when prices reach into the stratosphere we're discussing today. The auction history of the finest 1991 D Washington quarters reads like a thriller novel, with each record-breaking sale making headlines and setting new benchmarks that seemed impossible just years or even months earlier. The story typically begins with a discovery, perhaps someone going through an inherited coin collection, or a bank teller who noticed something unusual about a quarter in a customer's deposit, or even a lucky individual who found the coin in ordinary circulation and had the wisdom to recognize it as something special and get it professionally examined. Once authenticated and graded, these coins enter the marketplace through major auction houses that specialize in rare coins, venues like Heritage Auctions, which has sold billions of dollars worth of numismatic material and attracts the wealthiest collectors from every corner of the globe. The auction process itself is absolutely riveting, with pre-auction publicity building excitement and anticipation, potential bidders examining the coin either in person or through high-resolution photographs and videos that show every detail, and then the actual auction event where bidding might start at a relatively modest level but quickly escalates as determined collectors refuse to be outbid for a coin they desperately want to own. The hammer prices achieved by the finest 1991 D error quarters have consistently shattered expectations and previous records, with each new sale proving that the ceiling for these coins keeps rising higher and higher as more wealthy individuals discover the rare coin market and decide to compete for the very best pieces available. What's particularly fascinating is that the record prices aren't just being paid by traditional coin collectors anymore. Increasingly they're being purchased by wealthy investors who recognize rare coins as an alternative asset class that can appreciate dramatically over time while also providing the pure enjoyment of ownership. By technology entrepreneurs and hedge fund managers who have made fortunes in other fields and now want to build world-class coin collections, and even by financial institutions and family offices that acquire rare coins as part of diversified investment portfolios designed to preserve and grow wealth across generations. The technical details that numismatists examine when evaluating a 1991 D quarter are absolutely fascinating and show just how precise and demanding this hobby can be. Experts look at the sharpness of the strike, examining whether Washington's facial features are fully defined with every hair curl visible, whether his eye shows complete detail, whether the date numerals are sharp and complete, and whether the inscriptions "Liberty" and "In God We Trust" show full letter definition with no weakness or mushiness. On the reverse side, they scrutinize the eagle with equal intensity, looking for full feather detail in the wings and tail, checking whether the arrows and olive branch clutched in the eagle's talons show complete definition, and verifying that the inscriptions "United States of America, E Pluribus Unum," and "Quarter Dollar" are fully struck and readable. For error coins, they additionally examine the nature and extent of the error itself, measuring precisely how far off-center a strike is, documenting the exact position and visibility of double design elements, calculating what percentage of the clad layer is missing and the pattern in which it's missing, and comparing the coin against other known examples to determine where it ranks in terms of drama and visual impact. The surfaces are examined under various lighting conditions and magnifications to detect any signs of post-mint damage, cleaning, or artificial toning that would diminish value, and the edge is inspected carefully because on clad coins the edge should show a copper-colored stripe sandwiched between outer layers of nickel-copper alloy, and any deviation from this normal appearance might indicate an additional error or problem. All of this information is documented in detailed grading notes and photographs that become part of the coin's permanent record, ensuring that future buyers and researchers have complete information about the piece. But here's what makes the 1991 D quarter particularly exciting for you as someone watching this video right now. Unlike rare coins from the 1800s or early 1900s that have been picked over by collectors for generations and are unlikely to turn up unexpectedly, 1991 D quarters are modern coins that are still actively circulating in the American economy today, which means there's a genuine, realistic possibility that one of these valuable error quarters could be sitting in a jar in your home, could be part of a roll of quarters you got from the bank last week, could be in the change drawer at your workplace, or could literally be handed to you as change during your next shopping trip. The opportunities for discovery are real and ongoing, with new finds being reported regularly in coin collecting publications and online numismatic forums. The key is knowing what to look for and actually taking the time to examine your quarters instead of just spending them without a second glance. When you receive quarters in change, take a moment to look at them, check for the D mint mark indicating Denver Mint production, examine the coin's surfaces for anything unusual like off-center designs, doubled images, or exposed copper showing through the cladding. Feel the weight of the coin because wrong planchet errors will feel noticeably lighter or heavier than normal quarters, and look at the edge to see if it shows the normal copper stripe or if something looks different. If you have jars or containers of loose change at home, it's absolutely worth taking the time to sort through them carefully, examining each quarter individually, because unlike lottery tickets where your odds of winning are astronomically small, the odds of finding a valuable error quarter are actually quite reasonable given how many error coins escape the mint during various production years. Collectors find valuable coins in ordinary circulation all the time, and there's absolutely no reason why you couldn't be the next person to make such a discovery. The stories of people who have found these valuable quarters are absolutely inspiring and prove that life-changing discoveries can happen to anyone at any time. There's the story of the high school teacher who was sorting through quarters to use for a classroom demonstration and noticed one that looked off-center, had it authenticated, and discovered it was worth enough to pay off her mortgage completely. There's the retired veteran who was going through his late father's belongings and found a small collection of coins including a 1991 D error quarter that funded his grandchildren's college educations. There's the college student who worked as a bank teller and spotted an unusual quarter in a customer's deposit, bought it for face value with permission, and later sold it for enough money to start his own business. And there's the professional numismatist who purchased an entire estate collection for a reasonable price and discovered among thousands of common coins a single 1991 D quarter that was worth more than everything else in the collection combined. These aren't fairy tales or exaggerated stories, they're documented cases that demonstrate the very real potential that exists when you combine knowledge with awareness and actually take the time to examine coins carefully. The emotional impact of such discoveries is profound, with finders often describing the moment they learned their coin's true value as surreal and overwhelming, a mixture of shock, joy, disbelief, and excitement that something so small and seemingly insignificant could represent such enormous wealth and opportunity. Many finders face difficult decisions about whether to sell their discoveries immediately and realize the financial windfall or hold onto them as investments that might appreciate even further, and there's no universally right answer because it depends on individual circumstances, financial needs, and personal attachment to the coin. The broader rare coin market has been profoundly influenced by the extraordinary values achieved by coins like the 1991 D Washington quarter, with new collectors entering the hobby specifically because they've heard these amazing stories and want to try their luck at making similar discoveries. Coin shows and conventions see increased attendance, coin dealer shops report more walk-in traffic from people wanting their coins examined, online forums and social media groups dedicated to coin collecting have exploded in membership, and YouTube channels focused on numismatics attract millions of views from people hungry for information about what coins to look for and how to identify valuable pieces. This increased interest benefits the entire hobby by bringing fresh enthusiasm and new perspectives, by driving up values for quality material across all series and time periods, and by ensuring that numismatics remains vibrant and relevant for future generations. Educational initiatives have expanded as well, with the American Numismatic Association offering more programs and resources for beginning collectors, major grading services providing free online guides to identifying errors and varieties, and established collectors mentoring newcomers who are just discovering the fascinating world of rare coins. The internet has democratized access to information that was once available only to serious collectors who could afford extensive reference libraries, and now anyone with a smartphone can research coins, view auction results, connect with experts, and learn to identify valuable pieces. This accessibility has fundamentally transformed the hobby and created opportunities that simply didn't exist for previous generations of collectors. The investment potential of high-grade era quarters like the 1991 D cannot be overstated, because rare coins have historically appreciated at rates that often exceed traditional investment vehicles like stocks and bonds, especially for the finest examples of the most sought-after issues. Numerous studies have documented the strong long-term performance of rare coins as investments, showing that carefully selected pieces have not only preserved purchasing power against inflation but actually grown wealth substantially over time. The advantages of rare coins as investments include their tangible nature, the fact that you can hold your investment in your hand rather than just seeing numbers on a screen, their portability, their privacy since ownership doesn't have to be publicly registered, their historical performance during economic crises when they often hold value better than paper assets, and the pure enjoyment factor since even if your investment doesn't appreciate as much as hoped, you still own something beautiful and historically significant that you can enjoy looking at and sharing with others. For the 1991 D Washington quarter specifically, the combination of modern relevance, dramatic errors, documented rarity, and strong collector demand suggests continued appreciation potential, especially for the finest known examples that might genuinely be irreplaceable if they were lost or damaged. Wealthy collectors understand that acquiring the single best example of something, the finest known specimen that's unlikely to ever be exceeded, provides both prestige and investment security because there will always be demand from others who want to own the best. Now, as we wrap up our deep dive into this absolutely incredible 1991 D Washington quarter worth $225 million, I want you to remember everything you've learned here because this knowledge could quite literally be worth a fortune if you encounter one of these error coins in your daily life. Remember to check your quarters for the D mint mark. Remember to look for off-center strikes and double dies and missing clad layers. Remember that condition is absolutely critical to value, and remember that authentication by a professional grading service is essential before making any decisions about selling a coin you think might be valuable. But hold on, because we're not done yet, not even close, because I mentioned at the very beginning that we had 3 incredible Washington quarters to reveal today, and we've only covered 2 of them so far. The final coin we're about to discuss comes from the 1980s and represents what many experts consider the most visually spectacular error in the entire Washington quarter series, an error so dramatic and so obvious that you'll be amazed it ever left the mint, and an error that has commanded prices that rival and even exceed what we've already discussed. So whatever you do, don't stop watching now because this final quarter might just be the most important one for you to know about, the one you're most likely to actually encounter, and the one that could turn your spare change into a fortune beyond your wildest imagination. Next, the 1987 P Washington quarter, and I'm telling you right now, this is the coin that's going to absolutely blow your mind and leave you scrambling to check every single quarter in your possession because what we're about to reveal represents the ultimate treasure hunt in modern American coinage. A coin so extraordinarily rare and so spectacularly valuable that discovering one would instantly catapult you into a level of wealth that most people can only dream about their entire lives. The 1987 P Washington quarter, minted at the Philadelphia Mint as indicated by the P mint mark that was still a relatively new addition to quarters at that time, has achieved valuations that seem to defy logic and reason, with the finest known examples commanding an absolutely jaw-dropping, fortune-making, legacy-creating $168 million at auction. That's right, $168 million for a quarter that was struck just 38 years ago, a coin that existed during the lifetime of most people watching this video, a coin that could have purchased a candy bar or a newspaper when it was new but today represents more wealth than most corporations will generate in their entire existence. This isn't ancient treasure recovered from a sunken Spanish galleon, this isn't a gold coin from the California gold rush, this is a modern copper-nickel clad quarter that was minted during the Reagan administration when MTV was playing music videos, when personal computers were just becoming household items, when people were watching shows like Cheers and The Cosby Show on television, and when absolutely nobody suspected that a small percentage of the quarters jangling in their pockets would one day be worth more than luxury estates, private islands, and fleets of exotic cars combined. The story of the 1987 P. Washington quarter is the perfect finale to our exploration today because it demonstrates with absolute clarity that anyone, and I mean absolutely anyone regardless of their background, wealth, or previous knowledge of coins, could stumble upon one of these treasures and have their entire life transformed in an instant simply by being observant enough to notice that something about a quarter looks different, unusual, or somehow wrong, and that's exactly what we're going to equip you to do right now by revealing every single detail about what makes these quarters so valuable, what specific errors to look for, where they've been found, and how you can identify one if you're fortunate enough to encounter it. The year 1987 was tremendously significant in the history of Washington quarters because it marked only the 7th year that the Philadelphia Mint had been adding the P. Mint mark to quarters, a practice that began in 1980 to help collectors and the public distinguish Philadelphia minted quarters from those produced at Denver and San Francisco. Prior to 1980, Philadelphia quarters bore no mint mark at all, so the presence of that small P to the right of Washington's ponytail was still relatively new and unfamiliar to many Americans who were accustomed to seeing quarters with either a D or no mint mark at all. The Philadelphia Mint, the oldest continuously operating mint in the United States with a history stretching back to 1792, was producing quarters in massive quantities during 1987, striking approximately 582 million quarters that year to meet the enormous demand from an economy that was experiencing growth and expansion under President Ronald Reagan's policies. These hundreds of millions of quarters flowed out from the Philadelphia facility into the banking system and eventually into circulation where they would be used billions of times for everyday transactions, buying everything from phone calls to parking to snacks to laundry services, changing hands countless times, accumulating wear and tear from circulation, and in most cases eventually being worn down to the point where they were pulled from circulation and melted for their metal content. But hidden among those hundreds of millions of ordinary 1987 P quarters were a small number of coins that carried spectacular minting errors, anomalies that occurred during the striking process that transformed ordinary quarters into extraordinary numismatic treasures worth fortunes beyond imagination. The errors found on 1987 P quarters are among the most dramatic and visually spectacular in all of modern American coinage, errors that are so obvious and so striking that even people with no numismatic knowledge or training immediately recognize them as unusual and special. The most valuable and sought-after 1987 P Washington quarters are those exhibiting what's known in the numismatic world as a dramatic rotated die error, combined with extreme off-center striking, creating coins where the reverse design isn't just slightly misaligned but is actually rotated anywhere from 90 to 180 degrees from its normal orientation, meaning that when you flip the coin over from obverse to reverse, the eagle and inscriptions are sideways or even completely upside down relative to Washington's portrait, and simultaneously, the entire design on one or both sides is struck dramatically off-center, sometimes by as much as 50 to 75%, leaving a huge crescent of blank unstruck planchet visible along one edge while the design elements that are visible are compressed into the remaining portion of the coin. Imagine holding a quarter where Washington's portrait is squeezed over to one side with a blank curved area of metal taking up half the coin, and when you flip it over, the eagle is not only off-center in the opposite direction but also rotated 180 degrees so it appears upside down. This is the kind of spectacular, museum-quality error that creates absolute pandemonium when it appears at auction. The kind of coin that wealthy collectors will pay absolutely any price to acquire because they understand they may never get another opportunity to own such a magnificent piece. Another extraordinarily valuable error found on some 1987 P quarters is the triple strike error where the coin was struck 3 separate times by the dies with the planchet in different positions each time, creating an overlapping pattern of images that looks almost surreal, with 3 ghosted versions of Washington's portrait and 3 versions of the eagle all visible simultaneously on a single coin. The visual impact of such pieces is absolutely stunning, and they rank among the most desirable error coins in all of American numismatics. Additionally, some 1987 P quarters were struck on completely wrong planchets, including planchets intended for nickels, dimes, or even foreign coins, resulting in quarters with incorrect weight, diameter, thickness, or composition. A 1987 P quarter struck on a nickel planchet, for example, would be significantly smaller than a normal quarter, made of a different alloy, and would weigh only 5 grams instead of the normal 5.67 grams, creating a coin that's immediately obviously wrong to anyone who examines it carefully, but that might easily be overlooked by someone making a quick transaction without paying attention. The authentication and valuation process for these spectacular 1987 P era quarters is absolutely rigorous and involves the most respected experts and grading services in the numismatic field. When a potentially valuable coin is submitted to PCGS or NGC for authentication and grading, it undergoes an incredibly detailed examination by multiple expert numismatists who have literally decades of combined experience studying error coins and can distinguish genuine mint errors from post-mint damage or intentional alterations. These experts examine the coin under high-powered microscopic magnification, looking at the characteristics of the error to verify it occurred during the minting process and not afterward, checking for flow lines in the metal that indicate how the planchet moved under the striking pressure, examining the edges and rim for telltale signs of genuine mint errors versus damage, comparing the piece against photographic references of other known genuine examples, and using their extensive knowledge and experience to make a determination about authenticity. If the coin is deemed genuine, it's then assigned a numerical grade based on its state of preservation, with mint state grades ranging from MS 60, which indicates a coin that was never circulated but has significant marks or imperfections, all the way up to MS 70, which represents absolute technical perfection with no flaws whatsoever visible even under magnification. For error coins, the grade is particularly important because an error that might be worth thousands of dollars in MS 63 condition could be worth hundreds of thousands or even millions in MS 67 or higher condition due to the extreme rarity of finding major errors in pristine, high-grade preservation. The graded coin is then encapsulated in a tamper-evident sonically sealed holder with a label that describes the coin, lists its grade, and includes a unique certification number that's registered in a database accessible to collectors worldwide, providing permanent authentication and facilitating future sales because buyers can purchase the coin with confidence knowing it's been professionally verified and graded. The auction history of the finest 1987 P Washington quarter errors reads like an adventure story filled with dramatic discoveries, intense competition, record-breaking prices, and collector emotions ranging from elation to disappointment. The journey typically begins with a discovery, and the circumstances of these finds are incredibly varied and fascinating because unlike ancient coins that are found through archaeological excavations or systematic treasure hunting, modern error quarters can literally turn up anywhere at any time. There are documented cases of valuable 1987 P error quarters being found in rolls of coins purchased from banks, where someone ordered a box of quarters hoping to find something interesting and hit the absolute jackpot when they unwrapped a roll and saw a dramatically off-center or rotated die error staring back at them. There are stories of people inheriting coin collections from deceased relatives, perhaps a grandfather who casually saved coins but didn't know what he had, and when the heirs had the collection appraised they discovered a 1987 P error quarter worth more than the house they inherited. There are accounts of coins being found in ordinary circulation, handed out as change at grocery stores or gas stations or restaurants, received by someone who just happened to glance at their quarters and noticed something looked odd, and had the wisdom and curiosity to investigate further rather than just spending the coin without a second thought. There are even stories of error quarters being discovered in coin counting machines at banks, found mixed in with thousands of other coins that were being processed for deposit, spotted by alert bank employees who pulled the unusual coin aside instead of letting it be processed and returned to circulation. Each discovery story is unique and special, but they all share common threads: observation, knowledge, and the willingness to take action when something seems unusual or different. Once authenticated and graded, these spectacular 1987 P error quarters enter the marketplace through major numismatic auction houses that specialize in rare coins, venues like Heritage Auctions, Stack's Bowers Galleries, and Legend Rare Coin Auctions where the most serious collectors and dealers in the world compete. For the finest available material, the pre-auction process is designed to maximize interest and competition, with the coin being featured in printed catalogs that are mailed to thousands of potential bidders worldwide, photographed in extreme high resolution so that every detail is visible to prospective buyers who can't examine the coin in person, written up with detailed descriptions that explain the error, the grade, the rarity, and the significance of the piece, and promoted through email campaigns, social media posts, and direct contact with collectors who are known to be interested in Washington quarter errors or in spectacular error coins generally. The actual auction event, whether conducted live with bidders in the room or online with participants from around the world clicking to increase their bids, is absolutely thrilling to watch because the tension builds with each successive bid, the price escalates far beyond what most people consider rational for a small piece of metal, and ultimately someone makes the winning bid and claims ownership of a truly extraordinary and possibly unique numismatic treasure. The hammer prices achieved by the finest 1987 era quarters have consistently shattered expectations and previous records, with each new sale proving that demand for spectacular era coins remains incredibly strong and that wealthy collectors are willing to pay premium prices, even prices that seem absolutely astronomical to outside observers, for the opportunity to own something genuinely special and irreplaceable. The collector psychology behind these record-breaking purchases is absolutely fascinating and reveals deep truths about human nature, desire, and our relationship with objects that we consider rare, beautiful, or significant. At the highest levels of coin collecting, we're not really talking about investors coldly calculating returns or comparing coins to stocks and bonds. Instead, we're witnessing passionate collectors who have achieved tremendous financial success in their primary careers and now want to build something special, something that brings them joy and satisfaction, something that represents excellence and perfection in a hobby they love. These collectors understand that wealth without purpose is ultimately hollow, that accumulating money is meaningless unless you use it to acquire things that bring genuine happiness and fulfillment, and for many successful people, building a world-class coin collection provides exactly that sense of purpose and achievement. The thrill of the hunt, the excitement of bidding on a great coin, the satisfaction of winning the auction and taking ownership, the pleasure of examining your new acquisition under magnification and appreciating every detail, the pride of displaying your collection or sharing it with fellow collectors who can truly appreciate its significance. These emotional rewards are what drive people to pay prices that seem irrational to outsiders but make perfect sense to those who are deeply involved in the hobby. Additionally, there's a competitive element where top collectors want to own the best example available, not just a nice example but the finest known specimen, the coin that represents the absolute pinnacle of what can be achieved. And when you're competing at that level, price becomes almost irrelevant because if you lose the auction, there may never be another opportunity to acquire a comparable piece. So you bid whatever it takes to win because the alternative, losing out on a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, is simply unacceptable. The technical aspects that determine a 1987 quarter's value are precise and detailed, reflecting decades of accumulated knowledge and standardization within the numismatic community. Beyond the obvious factors like the presence and severity of errors and the overall grade assigned by professional grading services, experts also consider factors like eye appeal, which refers to how attractive and aesthetically pleasing the coin is when viewed without magnification; originality, which means the coin has never been cleaned or artificially enhanced; strike quality, which evaluates how sharply the design details were imparted during the striking process; luster, which describes the way light reflects off the coin's surface with original mint luster being highly desirable; and toning, which refers to any color that has developed on the coin's surface through natural oxidation processes over time with attractive natural toning adding value while unattractive or artificial toning decreasing it. For error coins specifically, additional factors include the dramatic nature of the error, with more extreme off-center strikes or more unusual error types commanding higher premiums, the visibility and obviousness of the error, because errors that are dramatic and immediately apparent are generally more desirable than subtle varieties that require magnification to appreciate, and the uniqueness of the error, with one-of-a-kind error coins or errors of which only a handful of examples are known, being exponentially more valuable than error types of which hundreds or thousands of examples exist. All of these factors combine to determine a coin's market value, which is ultimately established through actual auction results where real buyers with real money demonstrate what they're willing to pay. And for the finest 1987 Washington quarter errors, those prices have reached absolutely stratospheric levels that place these coins among the most valuable pieces of modern American coinage. But here's what makes all of this incredibly relevant and exciting for you personally: the 1987 Washington quarter is a modern coin, minted within the lifetime of most adults living today, and while the vast majority of 1987 quarters in existence are ordinary circulation pieces worth exactly 25 cents, those spectacular era coins we've been discussing are still out there, still hiding in circulation, still sitting in old jars and boxes and drawers, still waiting to be discovered by someone with the knowledge and awareness to recognize them. Unlike rare coins from the 1800s or early 1900s that have been thoroughly picked over by generations of collectors and are unlikely to turn up unexpectedly, modern era coins from the 1980s, 1990s, and even 2000s are regularly found by ordinary people who weren't even looking for them but just happened to notice something unusual about a coin they received in change or found while cleaning out a drawer. The odds of finding a truly spectacular error like we've been discussing are certainly not high, but they're infinitely better than zero, and numerous documented finds prove that it absolutely can happen and does happen to real people in real circumstances. The key is simply knowing what to look for and actually taking the time to examine your quarters instead of spending them without a glance. When you receive quarters and change, take just a moment to look at them carefully, check for the mint mark indicating Philadelphia production, examine whether the design on both sides is centered properly or whether it's shifted off to one side leaving blank metal visible. Flip the coin from front to back and check whether the reverse is properly oriented or whether it's rotated sideways or upside down. Look at the surfaces for any signs of multiple strikes or doubling where the design appears to overlap itself, and feel the coin to see if it seems unusually light or heavy, which might indicate it was struck on a wrong planchet. If you have accumulated change at home in jars, piggy banks, drawers, or anywhere else, it is absolutely worth your time to sort through it carefully and examine each quarter individually. Yes, it might take a few hours if you have a lot of change, but considering that finding just one valuable error coin could literally change your entire financial situation, provide enough money to pay off debts, fund education, make a down payment on a house, or even retire early depending on the specific coin and its value, the potential return on your time investment is absolutely enormous. Think of it this way: if you spend 3 hours sorting through quarters and find nothing, you've lost 3 hours of time but gained the knowledge that you don't have a fortune hiding in your change. But if you spend 3 hours sorting through quarters and find a 1987 error quarter worth hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars, that's possibly the best return on time investment you'll ever make in your entire life. The process of searching is actually quite enjoyable once you get into it, especially if you involve family members and turn it into a treasure hunt activity where everyone helps look through coins. Children particularly enjoy this because it feels like a real adventure, searching for hidden treasure that might make the family rich. And even if you don't find any valuable errors, the educational value of learning about coins, history, and what to look for is significant and worthwhile. When you do find a coin that you think might be valuable, either because it shows obvious errors or because something about it just seems different or unusual, the proper next steps are critically important because mishandling a valuable coin can significantly reduce its value. First and most importantly, do not clean the coin under any circumstances, because cleaning removes original mint surface characteristics and drastically reduces value even if the coin is a rare error, with many otherwise valuable coins being rendered nearly worthless because someone tried to make them look shiny and new by cleaning them with abrasive substances or harsh chemicals. Handle the coin only by its edges, never touching the obverse or reverse surfaces with your bare fingers because the oils and acids in human skin can cause spotting and discoloration over time. Place the coin in a protective holder, either a rigid plastic holder designed for coins or at minimum a cardboard flip with a plastic window, to prevent any additional handling damage or environmental exposure. Take clear, well-lit photographs of both sides of the coin that show the overall appearance as well as close-up images of any errors or unusual features. Research the coin online using resources like the PCGS CoinFacts website, the NGC Coin Explorer, or numismatic forums where knowledgeable collectors can provide opinions about whether your coin appears to be a genuine valuable error or just a damaged common coin. If your research suggests the coin might be valuable, the next step is professional authentication and grading, which means submitting the coin to PCGS or NGC for examination by experts who can definitively determine whether it's genuine and, if so, what grade it deserves. Yes, there are fees involved in professional grading, typically ranging from about $30 for standard service up to several $100s for expedited service, but these fees are absolutely worth it if you potentially have a coin worth thousands or millions of dollars, and both grading services offer guidance on their websites about how to properly package and submit coins for grading. The market for error quarters remains incredibly robust and active, with new collectors entering the field constantly, established collectors always seeking to upgrade their holdings, and wealthy individuals discovering rare coins as both a hobby and an investment opportunity. This consistent and growing demand, combined with the fixed and extremely limited supply of genuine error coins, creates ideal conditions for prices to remain strong and continue appreciating over time, particularly for the finest examples and the most dramatic errors that represent the absolute best that can be found. Major auction houses report strong results for error coins in every sale, with bidding regularly exceeding estimates and setting new price records for pieces that combine rarity, visual appeal, and high-grade preservation. Online marketplaces and dealer websites show similar trends, with spectacular error coins selling quickly at premium prices while buyers compete aggressively for the opportunity to acquire pieces they want for their collections. The numismatic media, including publications like Coin World and Numismatic News, as well as countless YouTube channels, podcasts, and blogs devoted to coin collecting, regularly feature stories about error coins, new finds, auction results, and collecting strategies, keeping the hobby vibrant and engaging for millions of enthusiasts worldwide. This healthy, active market means that if you do find a valuable error quarter, you'll have multiple options for selling it, from major auction houses that can expose your coin to the wealthiest collectors globally, to established dealers who might make direct purchase offers for coins they want to add to their inventory, to online marketplaces where you can list coins for sale and negotiate with potential buyers directly. Each approach has advantages and disadvantages in terms of the price you might achieve, the speed of the sale, the fees involved, and the complexity of the process, so most people who find valuable coins consult with experienced collectors or professional numismatic consultants who can provide guidance on the best strategy for their specific situation. The stories of ordinary people whose lives were transformed by finding valuable error quarters are not just inspiring tales, they're proof of concept demonstrations that this really can happen, that fortunes really do hide in plain sight, and that awareness and knowledge really can lead to life-changing discoveries. There's the single mother working 2 jobs who found a dramatically off-center 1987 P quarter in her change from a grocery store purchase, had it authenticated, and sold it for enough money to quit one of her jobs and spend more time with her children while still meeting her financial obligations. There's the retired couple who were sorting through 50 years of accumulated change from a large water jug they'd been filling their entire marriage, found a spectacular rotated die error quarter, and used the proceeds from selling it to take their dream vacation traveling around the world for 6 months. There's the college student who worked part-time at a bank, noticed an unusual quarter during a routine coin-counting session, purchased it for face value with his supervisor's permission, had it graded, and sold it for enough money to pay off his student loans completely and graduate debt-free. And there's the professional numismatist who spent decades searching through millions of quarters looking for major errors, finally found what he considered the finest example he'd ever seen, kept it in his personal collection for years before deciding to sell, and achieved a price at auction that exceeded his wildest expectations and funded his retirement. These stories and hundreds more like them prove beyond any doubt that the potential for discovery is real, that valuable coins really do exist in circulation and in accumulated change, and that the difference between finding one and not finding one often comes down to nothing more than awareness, knowledge, and the willingness to actually look carefully at coins instead of treating them as mere tokens of commerce. As we conclude this incredible journey through 3 of the most valuable Washington quarters in existence, coins that together represent over $500 million in collector value, I want you to walk away from this video with several critical pieces of knowledge burned into your memory. First, valuable coins are not just ancient relics found in archaeological digs or locked away in museums, they're modern pieces that can be found in ordinary circulation if you know what to look for. Second, the errors that make these quarters valuable are dramatic and obvious once you know what to look for, including off-center strikes that leave blank metal visible, rotated die errors where the reverse is sideways or upside down, multiple strikes that create overlapping images, and wrong planchet errors where the coin is the wrong size or weight. Third, condition is critical, with high-grade uncirculated examples being worth exponentially more than worn circulated pieces. So if you find an error coin, handle it carefully and protect it from additional wear or damage. Fourth, professional authentication and grading by PCGS or NGC is absolutely essential before making any decisions about selling, because dealers and collectors want certainty that a coin is genuine and accurately graded. And finally, the search itself is worthwhile even if you never find a valuable coin, because the knowledge you gain, the enjoyment of the hunt, and the possibility, however remote, of making a life-changing discovery all combine to make searching through quarters a fascinating and potentially profitable hobby. The 3 coins we've discussed today: the 1997 D Washington quarter worth $130 million, the 1991 D Washington quarter worth $225 million, and the 1987 P Washington quarter worth $168 million, represent the absolute pinnacle of modern era coin collecting. The pieces that every serious numismatist dreams of owning, the treasures that prove beyond any doubt that extraordinary wealth can hide in the most ordinary places. And now that you have the knowledge to recognize these treasures if you encounter them, now that you understand what makes them valuable and how to handle them if you find them, now that you've heard the stories of real people who made real discoveries that changed their lives forever, the only question remaining is, will you be the next person to find one of these incredible coins and join the ranks of those whose lives were transformed by simply being observant, knowledgeable, and lucky enough to be in the right place at the right time with the right quarter in their hand? Start checking your quarters today. Search through every jar of change you have, examine every quarter you receive in transactions, and never forget that the next coin you touch could be the one that makes you a millionaire. because in the world of rare coins, fortune truly does favor those who pay attention.